Tired of clustered dashboard and duplicating the same visuals over and over again for every single KPI? What if I told you that you could switch between different metrics with just one slicer and one chart? In this video, I'll show you a powerful DAX trick that turns static visual into a dynamic, interactive KPI dashboard. And the great thing is, no coding, no complex setup, it's just smart use of measures and slicer. Trust me, you will never build your chart the same way again. Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Lynn. I'm a senior data analyst with experience in banking and logistics industry. I'll help business go from data chaos to clear, confident decision. And now I want to do the same for you. If you're new to data or just want to take your Excel skill to the next level, either way, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and join me on this journey towards smarter, data-driven decision. This video is a part of an ongoing data journey where we've been helping Excel property, a fast-growing property chain, to transform chaotic pipe of timesheet data into a clear, actionable insight. In previous episodes, we start with a simple visual, adding basic objects and charts to build our foundation. Then we step it up with more complex advanced charts like waterfall chart and custom-built gauge chart to track performance against targets. In today's episode, we're adding another exciting layer of interactivity to our gauge chart. I'll show you a powerful advanced trick that lets users switch between different measures using a slicers, giving you one visual that delivers multiple insights. Here's what we'll do. First, we will take a moment to understand the business context and define a step-by-step strategy to tackle the challenge at hand. Then, with our strategy in place, we'll move into the practical execution phase. Along the way, you will learn several advanced techniques, including creating a parameter and integrating it into our PowerPivot data model. You will also learn writing an advanced DAX measure that dynamically reads the user's inputs and return the appropriate measures. Before we dive in, you can download the data file using the link in the description below to follow along with me. I've also included a chapter marker so you can navigate through the videos easily. Go at your own space, pause, rewind, and rewatch whatever helped you to learn best. And if you missed the last episode, you will find the link right here so you can catch up. Ready to make your KPI smarter? Let's dive into it. When it comes to measuring holiday rates, we actually have two different metrics, the standard holiday rate and the year-to-date holiday rate, each serving its own important purpose. The standard holiday rate compares the actual holiday employees have taken against the planned full year schedule. It helps to ensure that holiday is taken as scheduled, avoiding unexpected holiday payout at the year end. On the other hand, the year-to-date holiday rate is designed to track progress up to a certain point in time. For example, in our case, we want to measure it up until quarter 3. This measure is especially valuable for spotting risks earlier, like too many unused holidays piling up later in the year. In short, both measures are useful and they provide valuable insight for the business. And depending on the timings and the context, the end user might want to see one or the other. So we definitely want to show both measures. But creating separate calculation and visuals for each measures can become very messy and inconvenient, especially on a dashboard. So here's our questions. Can we let users dynamically choose which measure they want to see within the same visual? And that's exactly the challenge we'll be tackling today. Let me show you how it works. Let's spend some time to define the strategy on how we're going to approach this problem. First, we need to do some preparation. We need to create a parameter table. This will act as our source of options for the user to choose from. Next, we'll add a selection slicer. This will allow user to interact with the model and tell it which measure they want to see. We will also need to make sure that the measure we want to select will work on its own without relying on external filter. Second, we will start to write advanced DAX codes. This is where the magic happens. We will use advanced DAX to read the slicer input and return the right measure dynamically. And as a bonus, we will also spend some time to dive deeper into the logic behind our DAX formula. Once we understand how the selection formula works, we can apply the same logic for other measures that are required in our charts. And finally, when we have all the measures ready, we will link them to our chart, making it fully dynamic and slicer responsive. Alright, with a clear strategy in mind, let's get started. I'm gonna quickly add an extra column here so we have more space for our calculation. Alright, the first step is to create a parameter table, and I want 3 columns in this table. That'll be the rate, target rate, and the step. And for the rate, I'm gonna call it yearly or year to date in quarter 3. Right? Now the target rate we see here that is 95% and 75% respectively. The steps I'm going to put here at 5% each. Right? Now I'm going to convert it into a table by clicking Ctrl T. My table has a header, hit OK. Now I'm gonna rename the table. I'm gonna name it as holiday parameter. Now I'm going to add our table into the data model. And there are 2 ways you can do this. One is you can load this into Power Query and then load this into PowerPivot data model. We do this method when we have a lot of complex data transformation to perform. However, in this case, I only want a direct load, so I don't necessarily need to load it to Power Query. I can load it directly into PowerPivot data model without any transformation. And to do that, I'm going to go to PowerPivot tab and simply add this table into data model. And the data is added into our data model. We don't need to connect this table to our existing data model because this type of table is called disconnected table. So there's nothing to be done right now. So let's go back to Excel. All right, now I'm going to quickly copy this pivot table and paste it right here. Kick out the holiday plan and actual that we don't need. And now I'm going to add the slicer coming from this table. So go to all. Here you can see the holiday parameter table added. And I need the rate, so right click and add a slicer. Right now I'm going to link this slicer with all of the holiday rate pivot table here. So right click, report connection. Now tick the box for all of the holiday related measure and hit OK. Let's move this right here. Now the idea that you can see now is I'm going to somehow create another measure that allow me to flexibly choose between the value between the holiday rate and the year-to-date holiday rate by simply select a slicer like this, and it will flexibly choose between the 2 measures. So how do we do that? Now let's start first with our measure. For the holiday rate, we're okay with it because it is an independent measure. But for the year-to-date holiday rate, we want to see it at the quarter 3 only. And for now, we're using the external filter from the quarter column from the calendar table. But we don't want that. We want this measure to be independent and it should work on its own, so that I can use this independent measure in any of the pivot table without the interference of the external filter. All right, so I'm going to go to the timesheet table, create a new measure. I'm going to call the new measure year-to-date Q3 holiday rates. And now what is the conditions? We want the year-to-date holiday rate, but only when the quarter is in Q3. So we will use calculate and the quarter equal to Q3. DAX formula, there's no error. Now format it as percentage and hit OK. All right, so now we have the measure with its own filter context, and it can work independently without any additional external filter. Let's quickly add this year-to-date Q3 holiday rate measure into this pivot tables here and get rid of the quarter filter. And as you can see, the new measure kept the same value without the need of the external filter. I don't need this measure anymore, so let's get rid of it. And I'm going to do the same for this pivot table over here, which is add the new measure in and get rid of the external filter. Alright, now that we have both of our independent measure ready, it's time for the selection process. And we're going to write a DAX measure that allows us to choose flexibly between the two measures. And because the formula is quite complex, I'm going to write this measure in PowerPivot data model interface. Let's activate the PowerPivot window. I'm going to write our measure in the holiday parameter table. I'm going to call it holiday rate flex, comma equal. Now expand the formula bar here, make it a little bit bigger so we have more space to write our formula. Now I'm going to write this measure in two steps. The first step is to identify the selected value from the slicer. And then the second step is based on the selections, we go to switch the measure accordingly. Now for the first step, how can we identify what value is selected from the slicer? We have a DAX formula called selected value, which allow us to return a certain values based on the selection. But this formula only available in Power BI and not in Excel Power Pivot. So we need to find an alternative way. And lucky for us, selected value is the sugar syntax for this formula, which is available for us to use in Excel. Let me quickly change the column to the correct one. So that will be the rates column from the holiday parameter table. So this formula will help us to get the value from the slicer. Now, to understand how this formula works, I'm going to create another measure. So hit enter to finalize this measure and create a new measure called formula explain, comma equal. Now we go to split this formula into three parts. So the first part is our original formula. The second part is the has one value. Quickly copy and paste this formula here. And the third part is the value formula. Also copy and paste it right here. Now I'm going to return the has one value formula. All right, now let's head back to Excel and see how these formula work. Right now back in Excel, I'm going to add the two new measure in this pivot table right here. So go to all in holiday parameter table, add these two new measure in. And as you can see, right now, the formula explain measure return false. Why is that? It is because the has one value check if there is only one unique value in the column, and in this case, that is the rate column. And right now, there is nothing selected from the slicer. In other words, there are multiple options available, and that's why it returns false. Now, if I just select one option from the slicer, you can see that the formula now changed to true because has one value formula validates that indeed there is only one selected value in the rate column. The same happened if I select the year-to-date Q3 value. So now that we understand the first part of the if function, let's shift our focus to the second part, which is the values parts. Now, the value function allows us to graph the value from the column, but only when it is a unique value. So that's why you see here right now, it returned the year-to-date Q3. And if I select the yearly only, it's return it accordingly. Because right now in the rate column, only one value is selected. Now, if I unselect the filter, you can see that there's an error because the value function cannot handle multiple values. So to make sure that this values formula only used when one value is selected, we need to use the if function. So here, if we have only one value, then we return the selected value. If not, we return blank instead of error. Alright, so now if I'm selected yearly, it's only one value, it's returned accordingly. And if now I'm clear all the filters, so multiple value is returned, we see the blank value is returned in both formulas here. Alright, now that you understand the first part of the formula and how it works, let's move on to the next step. I'm gonna activate the PowerPivot data model window and go back to our formula. Now, for the first step, I'm gonna call it var selection. And then for the second step, I'm gonna call it var result to return the result that we want. Simply apply the switch formula so that we can easily switch between different options. The first argument for the switch formula will be true. So if anything is true, we will return the result we wanted, and in that order. The value we want to return is if the selection equal to yearly, which is coming from the slicer, then we want to return the holiday rate measure. A different argument is if that selection equal to year-to-date quarter 3, then I want to return the year-to-date quarter 3 holiday rates. If none of these condition is true, I want the default option to be holiday rates measure. Now return the results variable. Alright, now quickly format the formula to percentage and no decimal, and we're good to go back to Excel. Alright, so now I'm going to quickly change this standard holiday rate to the holiday rate flex measure we just created. So add this in and kick out the holiday rates. Now, if I select my slicer to year-to-date quarter 3, this should be updated automatically. And this measure is also linked to our model, which will reflect dynamically on the charts. Now that you know how to write DAX code to switch between different measures, let's apply the same strategy for the target rate and the steps as well. So let's go back to the PowerPivot data model. I'm going to create a new measure. I'm going to call this holiday target flex. Now for the calculation, I'm going to apply the same strategy like before. But because we did not calculate the target rate, we'll need to perform an extra step in order to calculate the target measure. So for the first step, the calculation stayed the same. Now for the second step, I want two variables. The first one is the default variable, and the second one is the flex variable. Now with the defaults, I want to return the target when the rate is equal to yearly. That will be calculate, and the expression we want to do is the sum of the target column from the holiday parameter table, and we only want to sum if the rate column is equal to yearly. Close the bracket. Now for the flex, I want to return the target according to the selection of the slicer. So we'll do the same calculation. Just copy and paste right here. And now instead of the yearly, I want this to return as the selection. Now for the final step, we simply check if there is a selection from the slicer. So if there is, we're going to return the flex variable. If not, then we return the default variable, right? So I'm going to quickly copy this part of the formula right here, change this into results, and we're going to update this formula. If there is one selection, we want this to be flex variable. If not, we want to return the default. Close the brackets. Now we return the results. All right, so now I'm going to quickly make a copy of this, and I'm going to create the second measure for the steps. So paste the formula right here. We're going to change the target into the step and hit enter, and that's it. Now I'm going to quickly format our measure as percentage and no decimal. All right, look good. Let's close the PowerPivot window and head back to Excel. We're going to make full use of this table. So I'm going to change this into holiday flex. Also rename the table. So go to pivot table analyzer and change it into holiday flex. We don't actually need these measure anymore. So I'm going to kick them out and now add the target and the step here. Also kick out this one as well. Alright, now I'm just going to change the static value to a dynamic one. Okay, so let's test this. If there's nothing select from the slicer, then the default rate will be the yearly. And if I select the year-to-date Q3, the calculation area is automatically updated, which also reflected in our visual. And that's exactly what we wanted. We have created a visual that can display multiple measures, all controlled by a single slicer. This is a game changer when it's come to building a cleaner, more interactive dashboard, because instead of duplicating this chart for every single KPI, you can keep things compact and let users choose what they want to explore. Alright, before we move forward, let's quickly clean up our worksheet to keep everything tidy. So for this pivot table, I'm going to quickly switch this measure to the correct one so that our total number are aligned. So add in the holiday rate flex and kick out the year-to-date measures. And I'm going to rename this pivot table to holiday flex by store. And also change the name here as well. Then I'll arrange the slicers and pivot tables for a cleaner layout. And we don't need this calculation area anymore, so let's delete it. And we're done. In today's session, we took a big step forward in building a smarter and more interactive dashboard. You've learned how to create a dynamic visual that lets users switch between measures using a slicers. This is a powerful technique that will keep your visual clean and flexible. So far, we've used the gauge charts to visualizing performance at a glance. will show how actual results compare to the target in a clear and intuitive format. They work especially well for high-level matrix and total aggregate value. Now, what happens when we add more complexity to our visual, like breaking down the analysis by store? Well, creating a separate custom gauge chart for every single store would quickly become messy and unmanageable. So in the next video, we will explore a smarter, more scalable solution using the KPI features inside Excel PowerPivot data model. It is perfect for slicing and comparing data across multiple dimensions. Thank you for watching. If this video helped you out, please feel free to give it a like and share it with someone who might be benefit too. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss future tutorial. And drop your thoughts, questions in the comment section below. I'd love to connect with you. See you in the next video.